Today is April the 2nd, 2021, and we are here today with Mayor Ginger Nelson. Ginger, welcome.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate your taking time to do this. This is a big project y'all are investing in, so thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Let's start off by telling the voters who you are. I mean, most of them know that you're the mayor, but kind of where you grew up, where you came from, and how you ended up being the mayor. And then we'll go into what you've accomplished as mayor and what you want to accomplish during your next term.
Sure. Well, I'm a lifelong Texas Panhandle resident. I grew up in Spearman. I was born in Lubbock while my parents were at Tech. And my family's from Perryton. And so we moved back to that area, moved to Perryton for just a little while. And then my dad moved to Spearman. And so I grew up really there my whole life. And that's where I met my husband, Kevin. His family's from Spearman also. Our families are in farming and ranching. Our moms both owned small retail businesses growing up. And my dad is also in the oil and gas business. So that's our background. We stayed pretty close to home, what we consider home in the Texas Panhandle. We went to Texas Tech together and then came back here to Amarillo, which was the city we'd always known about growing up in Spearman. So we've been here over 25 years, and we have 3 children, and have had a law practice here for about 20 years. We own the Amarillo Building, which is, I think, neat. It's a piece of Amarillo's history. It's the first high-rise. It's only 8 floors, but I think that's neat that they call it a high-rise. Excuse me. First high-rise in our city. And then about 5 years ago, we got into the hotel business. So we've been learning that business and trying to learn how to do the hospitality business. So I think that comes from growing up small town, just watching our parents. All of our parents worked different. They had a primary job and they all had a secondary job too. I think it takes that a lot of times to live in a small town, both for the economy of the town, but also for the, just your household. And so I guess Kevin and I are playing back into our roots, just exploring different entrepreneurial ideas. So that's kind of in a nutshell who I am.
Trying to create different income streams.
Yeah, because you never know. 1 year, oil and gas is not going to be good, and you're going to rely on your ranching income. Or 1 year, corn prices are going to be down, and you're going to rely on that retail store income. My mother-in-law is also a teacher. So, I mean, they had a lot of places that they both poured into the community, and then they also used those resources to support their families. And that's the model that Kevin and I have tried to follow.
Very good. So how long have you been mayor?
I've been mayor for 4 years now. I was elected in 2017 and reelected in 2019.
So what do you like about being mayor?
I like meeting all the different people in our city. I had my people that I had things in common with. Either their kids were the same age as my kids, or I had done work for them as their attorney, or, you can know your small circle of people. But in a public service position like serving on city council, you get exposed to so many people in the city, people you wouldn't otherwise have ever crossed paths with. And not only do you just get to see them, but you often get to sit down and listen to things that they think need to change in the city, problems that they have, concerns, solutions. You might get to meet their children and visit their businesses. So it's such a broader exposure to who we are in our city and the people that we are in our city. I think that's definitely my favorite part of it.
So what possessed you to run the first time?
Well, this was something I never saw coming. My husband never saw coming. It wasn't, although my dad was the mayor of Spearman for, I can't remember if he served 1 or 2 terms, but he served on the council and then he served as mayor. So I I do have that in my background, but it was not something that I ever aspired to do. I think our city was going through a time where the leaders were struggling to agree and identify the direction that the city should go in. And in their conversations with each other, they were struggling for respect and giving. They wanted respect. They were struggling giving respect to the person that didn't agree with their point of view. And it was painful for our city, both for the citizens who were watching that happen. You know, as we had a headline one time in that season that said Amarillo was the most dysfunctional city in America. And that made, I think it made everyone sad, even the leaders who were struggling. So I just began praying for our city and asking God to bring forward people that could lead in a way that would respect everyone, would give everyone dignity, but would create an environment for all ideas to be heard, and then for the idea that had more consensus to move forward, because we were just stuck. We weren't moving forward. And in my mind, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backward. I mean, there really is no such thing as standing still. You know, if you're a tree and you're not growing, then you're dead. There's no method for just staying there and being the same. So just in the process of praying for our city and wanting to see us move forward, wanting to see us have a dialogue, I don't expect everyone to always agree. There's 200,000 of us living in the city. We have 200,000 different points of view. But how are we creating an environment where people are welcomed and respected to bring their point of view forward, even if it's not the point of view that ends up being the idea that's chosen? So just on that, that's our heart. That's my family's heart. I mentioned to my husband that I thought one of us should consider running. And so we began praying about it, and we gave our kids a veto power on it because obviously we knew it would affect our family greatly. It does. I say all the time when we started serving as mayor, because our whole family serves as mayor. My daughter's even here with me today, and the boys, we have 2 sons and 1 daughter. Kevin and the boys are out putting out campaign signs while we're here doing this, and not just during campaign. It's a family affair all the time. They go to events, and there have been many family dinners that we have spent. Instead of a family dinner at home, we've been out at a community event or out on a Saturday doing a neighborhood cleanup. So we serve as a family. We gave the kids a veto power on that decision to enter into public service, and they, I think it took, Maddie, like 2 minutes, and they were all in, which surprised me a little bit that they didn't have more questions about it. And then we visited a lot with some of our inner circle friends with our pastor, and just asking for advice, asking people to pray about it with us. So after a whole lot of prayer and a whole lot of conversation, we decided that we would do it. And I don't think I know we haven't regretted it. It's been a privilege and an honor to serve. It's expensive. It costs a lot of our time. It's cost from our business. It's cost from our family. But we've learned a lot. And,
your kids won't get a better education.
Yes, that's true. And we love our city more now than we did always before. I mean, even the Bible tells us that wherever your heart is, there your treasure will be also. And I think as much time and effort as we've spent in a family serving our city in the last 4 years, of course we love it more, and we want to see good things happen for it.
I don't think people realize that people who serve in public office, what they sacrifice to do that for them. You know, the ones that complain about things have no concept. You know, they haven't stepped forward. But but yet it's easy for them to complain rather than to propose solutions.
Yeah, it does take a lot of work to implement a solution in our hotel business. We say a lot that, well, it's great to have a good idea, but the person who executes it is the one who's actually adding value to the team. And that's where things shift from somebody who has an opinion on Facebook about what should happen in the city versus somebody who's actually taking time away from their family, whether it's an elected official or there are so many community volunteers that are changing our city, and they're doing it not just by using words on a social media platform. They're actually taking a good idea and they're sacrificing their time and energy and sometimes their money to implement it, to execute the idea. And that's where real change happens, and that's where you really can impact the city. So kudos to everybody who's an executor and an implementer, because those are the kind of citizens we've got to have in our city.
Yep. Good. So what do you dislike about being mayor?
I dislike two things, I think. I dislike the amount of misinformation that goes out about the city. And I think that's back to everyone has their own level of skepticism or their own perception of truth, and you are entitled to your own opinion. The frustrating thing for me is we're not entitled to our own set of facts. The facts are the facts. But we're at a stage right now, culturally, it's hard to know where to get the facts. And media is changing as social media has come online. And I think one of the hardest, most difficult parts about serving in public service right now is that Facebook is not a reliable source of information. It might have some reliability, but how do you know the person posting has the facts, or do they just have their facts? And so that's true of every single post that's out there, yet people read it and confirm it and then pass it on. And so it's very difficult to answer people who are angry when many times they're angry on false information. And that just leads to the second point that I think is very hard. Hurting people hurt others. That's just people who are in pain, and we're all in pain at some point or another. One of their coping mechanisms is to lash out against other people. And so it makes me sad when I see people lashing out against the mayor or against another city leader. They don't know that person. They don't know their heart. They don't know their thoughts. But yet they talk about them or they say mean things about them like they're not a person, like they don't have a family, and like they do know what their intent or their heart is. And so I try to step back and just realize that, the mayor is in a leadership position, and people who are hurting or who are angry, it doesn't have to be logical that they take that and aim it at the mayor. They're not aiming it at Ginger Nelson.
Yeah, they don't know you.
They don't, exactly. They're just aiming it at something they can target. So,
well, I've dealt with this with employees and tenants and people in general. And I think we probably had some of the same people come after both of us. But what I've come to the conclusion is they're not mad at me and they're not mad at you. They're really mad at themselves. And they take it out on somebody else. But they're really mad at themselves.
And I try to keep in mind that, I think my best response based on my Christian values is to show compassion, even if I don't understand. I can just tell that if they would say that, they must be hurting. So I just need to respond compassionately to them. But that part of the job is hard.
Yeah, you just have to realize it's not really personal because they don't know you personally. So
right.
They're just lashing out because they're mad at something else.
And I try to have compassion, too, for the people on social media who are reading those very false things that are, written about the mayor or other city council members. And I think, well, if that was true, I would be mad, too. It's not true. And so I wish there was a way. I wish there was a button I could push that would spread truth quicker. And that would make the job easier.
I've never been a social media fan. I've never understood it. I've never understood why people really want to engage in it. And I tell people, I'm not going to argue with anybody. I don't think that works. To me, the best you can do what's right, be a good example, and don't worry about it. Because you're never going to convince somebody by arguing with them. It just doesn't work. In fact, I think you just make them madder and make them dig in. So I don't even engage in it at all.
Yeah.
But you're not going to make everybody happy.
No. A friend of mine gave me a sign after I became the mayor. It says, "You can't please everybody. You're not pizza." And so I keep that in the mayor's office just as a reminder that, again, it's not personal. It is my job as the mayor to listen to people's ideas. And, there are some people who they want the mayor to listen to every idea. And so there's 200,000 people that live here. I did the math one time. I can't remember what it was. But if I listened 24/7 to all their ideas, everybody gets like 2 minutes or something. Somebody do the math real quick. But I mean, it's really it's a lot of people. And there are some folks who forget that they have to share. They have to share room at the table for all the ideas to be heard. And maybe I've already met with them several times about their idea. Then I have to keep listening, and I have to keep giving time to people who have different ideas. So it makes me sad when people say, well, I came to you, I brought my idea, and, you did something different. Well, that is part of our process as a republic, a democratic republic. The ideas get put on the table, and then the city council votes about them, and then we move on. The ideas with the best votes move forward. And people tend to be frustrated if their idea is not the one that moves forward with the votes. And again, we just have to remember that this is how our process works.
Well, that's why voting is so important and why they need to vote for who they think will best put forth their ideas.
That's right.
They need to be engaged at the ballot box. And if they're not satisfied there, they need to step up and run for city council.
Mm-hmm.
Or serve on a board or some other place in the city so they can understand better how things work.
Yes. And I think this time especially we have a great group of candidates. I admire and respect every single one of them for putting their name on a ballot and for representing different points of view, because it does give voters a choice.
Right. That's what we want.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good for every elected official to have an opponent, because I think it makes them better. Because if you're doing a good job, you want to be able to have an opportunity to tell people what you've done and what you want to do. And if you don't have an opponent, you don't get that opportunity.
Yeah, there's nowhere to show a contrast.
It's good. Mm-hmm. A lot of people say, oh, I don't want an opponent. And I'm like, yes, you do. Mm-hmm. You're doing a great job. Mm-hmm. So you get to tell everybody. Mm-hmm. And then it's a non-issue. The people are going to vote for you if you're doing a good job. Mm-hmm. So you don't have anything to worry about. So what do you think your major accomplishments have been over the past 4 years?
We've had some really good victories for the city. And I would start first by talking about the Texas Tech Vet School. That's a project that in the first 3 years as mayor, I spent a tremendous amount of time working on it. the first 2 years I was mayor, I did at least one meeting a week about the vet school. And in the last legislative session 2 years ago, many trips to Austin in order to make that a reality. And it's a fantastic opportunity. It's very exciting that this fall they'll be opening and doing classes with their first cohort of students. They have all their faculty hired, so all those new jobs came to the city. And if you're driving near the hospital, you can see the construction on their new vet school. Their building is coming close to being done. And so that's a $76 million impact in our community every year. And people say, well, that's great, but how does that affect the dry cleaners and the coffee shops? And well, if you look at our economy as like a bucket, and we got all those dollars floating in that bucket, and I buy a cake from you, Dan, and you buy a cup of coffee from me, we're just trading the same dollars that are already in our bucket. But when we bring a business like the vet school or like the Amazon distribution center, and they bring dollars from outside our community, so they're actually increasing the size of our bucket. Those are new dollars for your business, new dollars for my business. So a vet school or an Amazon distribution center benefits every business that's here in our community, because those two projects alone will add $112 million a year. Every year, our bucket will increase by $112 million. So that's $112 million for coffee shops and dry cleaners and mom and pop restaurants, and all of those businesses now have more money in our local economy that they can trade back and forth with. So that doesn't even begin to touch all of the research opportunities. Been doing some work on recruiting pharmaceutical manufacturing to our city. All of that ties back into that one big victory that we had with the Texas Tech Vet School. And I think there are other projects like that at WT and with Amarillo College. Anything we do to promote those local education partners and strengthen those partnerships, that's a win. So I would pick probably the vet school as really as one of the biggest accomplishments that I've done while we've been on city council. But there's been a lot of things. Our zoning ordinance had not been overhauled since 1968. So this council has accomplished that. And that's something that as a citizen, you might not encounter the zoning ordinance. But the fact that it was so old and had been amended so many times that it was like trying to read the Internal Revenue Code. It was just impossible to navigate. It was a big project, though, and it's taken us over 2 years, to get it across the finish line.
So they totally rewritten it?
They have a total rewrite, yes. And at the city council level, we wrote policy. The city council did not have written policy. They had traditionally done this and that, but out of that difficult council that came before us, we realized we needed some written policy so that going forward, everybody who was elected knew what the expectations were. Council can change the policy at any time when it's no longer working for them, but they need to do it as a unit, and they need to vote on it as a democracy. So we've done some really important, long-term, impactful things for the city, and I've learned a lot being on the journey of doing it.
Why don't you explain to the voters a little bit about what the role of the mayor and the city council is, and how that works with overseeing the city? And it's my understanding your main role is to oversee, well, the way I understand it, and tell me if I'm wrong, the mayor is the face of the city, you're the spokesman for the city, mm-hmm. and the council and you oversee the city manager, mm-hmm. because we're a city manager form.
Right.
Am I wrong or right?
No, that's right. We're a city manager form of government, which means the city manager operates the city. The city council governs the city, and they have one employee. Actually, they have two employees the way we're set up. The city manager and the municipal court judge. Some cities just have the city manager. So it's very important for the mayor and the city council to stay in their lane, doing the things they are supposed to do. They don't go out and visit department heads and get in the day-to-day operations of the city. They ask questions, they set the target, and the city manager now they can arrange to go and check on things, and they should. There's an accountability component there. But I think a really good analogy is the city manager is like a taxi cab driver, and the city council is like the client who gets in the back of the cab. And so the council gets in and says, we want to go to 10th and Adams Street. And then the city manager gets to decide, well, do I take 2 lefts and a right, or 2 rights and a left to get to 10th and Adams? He decides operationally how we get there. The city council has set the goal. They've cast the vision for where the city is going. And that's really important for us to work together like that. And I think sometimes there are, in the past at least, there have been some misconceptions about what the role of a council member is. And I think it's dangerous even when a candidate comes on thinking they have a single issue they want to change. Mm-hmm. If they're driven by a single issue, they're getting really close into that operational control. And that's not the role of a council member. If they want a change in a single issue, maybe what they need to do is to apply to work at the city and effectuate change that way. So there are things that the council says this needs to change at a more granular level. But for the most part, the most valuable role the city council plays in the city is to have their eyes up and to be thinking in 20 and 30-year chunks, not looking down in the details of what has to happen for us to have clean water and roads that are repaired. And, I can't tell you what kind of asphalt we're using. I can't tell you how to run the street sweeper. That's not my lane. And it shouldn't be the mayor's lane. The mayor needs to be able to tell you, though, in 30 years, we're going to have research-based opportunities in our city. We're going to have a workforce that's growing and strengthening the businesses that we have in the city. We're going to have more educational opportunities. We're going to have broadband for every one of our citizens so that they can grow their business and expand their educations. This is the role of the mayor, is to cast a vision for where our city is going and how to bring a better life to our citizens. The mayor also plays a very important role in building relationships outside of the city. And I was really unaware of that until I became the mayor. Amarillo is isolated, obviously. A lot of us like that. We like doing life up here and nobody else interfering in our business. But there is a whole nother world outside the Texas Panhandle, and Austin and Washington, D.C. drive a lot of choices that affect our world, and they spend our tax dollars, and we need to make Amarillo's voice known as to how we want to see our tax dollars spent and how those tax dollars come back to benefit us here in the Texas Panhandle. We have great representation in our congressional and Texas legislature representatives, and I'm grateful for that. But it's important for us to build relationship and communicate often with them, and even just building relationships into other cities. I participate in the Big City Mayors group. It's the top 15 cities, the largest cities in Texas. Amarillo's the 14th, so I'm not quite the last seat at the table, but I'm close. But I have enjoyed watching those men and women. Mayor Betsy Price in Fort Worth is a friend of mine and has mentored me a lot. She's been mayor of Fort Worth for 10 years. And I think Amarillo lines up with the values that the people of Fort Worth have. They're agriculture-based. They're very have a lot of faith. They have family values. And and they're further down the road than we are. They've experienced growth that we're going to experience. And so, I ask Mayor Price questions like, well, what do you wish someone had done 10 years before you became the mayor? Because I think I'm that mayor for the person who's coming down the road. I'm trying to make decisions today that will make the job easier for the mayor 20 years from now. And so it's sort of that, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is today. I want to know that I planted the trees that the next mayor, that the mayor 20 years from now needs to sit under, and that the people of our city need to sit under. So that role was not something I expected. It takes a tremendous amount of time and effort to build those relationships. I have a very close friendship with the mayor of Lubbock, and we do a lot of things together, because when you take Lubbock's 250,000 voters and Amarillo's 200,000 voters, it's easier for Mayor Pope and I to get a meeting with the governor together. And I know he's going to see things the way I see things, because Lubbockites and Amarilloans have very similar points of view. So we can make coalitions like that then when we go to talk to Senator Cornyn or Senator Cruz, we're speaking with more voters than just the voters that we have here in Amarillo. So those relationships are very important to citizens. And as a citizen, I was very unaware of just how important they were and how much work it takes to open the doors of influence and relationships so that you can make those coalitions happen.
Now, you mentioned you're working on broadband for everyone. What does that mean?
Well, when COVID hit and we went home to either do school or do work, it became very obvious that we have different access across the city to broadband. And our school districts did a wonderful job of responding quickly and putting hotspots and buses that were parked here and there so that families could park beside the bus and do homework. But I knew right then we had to do something. So we started in June of last year, and I asked Howard Smith if he would lead this project for the council. So Howard and I have been working with Rich Guyon, the IT director for the city, to develop a plan that would provide a basic broadband access for every citizen or every visitor in the city. And our hope all along has been able to do it at no cost. So after 9 months of work, we are very close to having a shovel-ready project. And I'm so grateful because now the federal government is identifying funds that cities can use for broadband projects, and ours is ready to roll out. We basically just need funding. So this project would be, a good way to say it simply is, the city would create a private LTE network, and we would then be in control of who accessed it, and we would allow access for education, for educational use, for medical use. So if you wanted to do a telemedicine appointment, you would have access to it. Just access to social services like paying your water bill or things of that nature, banking, you would have access to that at no cost. You would not have access to downloading movies or doing any gaming through that signal. If you wanted that, you would pay an extra fee and go up to the next level of service. But what we know is that if you can't turn your homework in as a fifth grader because you don't have broadband, either maybe your family can't afford it, or maybe it's just not available reliably in your part of our city. If you can't finish your homework, it makes it really hard to stay interested in school. It makes it hard to succeed in school. And then that just begins to exacerbate itself. If it's hard in fifth grade and sixth grade, how do you finish middle school? And if you don't finish middle school, how do you finish high school? If you don't finish high school, how do you become part of our workforce with the skills and the education level that we need you to have in order for business owners to hire you and provide you a living wage so that you are an active member of our city? So it is about that one fifth grader who needs to turn in their math homework, but it's so much bigger than that. It is how it affects our businesses and the workforce that we provide them. And then you can take that one step further. If you're thinking that 20 and 30-year plan, how does this affect the businesses we're trying to recruit to Amarillo? If we want to recruit a pharmaceutical manufacturing plant and they're going to bring 500 jobs and they need them to be at this skill level or at this education level, are we developing our workforce in a way that we can actually attract that business and have the workers they need to hire? I think we need to improve on that. And we've been putting partnerships in place and programs in place through Amarillo College. We have the Thrive program where AISD, the Economic Development Corporation, the Area Foundation, and private donors have partnered so that if you graduate from an Amarillo high school, you can go to Amarillo College for 2 years at no cost. That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't think very many people know about that.
And that's been something that this city council worked on in the last 4 years. And so there are programs there that I think are important for improving our workforce. And we just need more business owners and more parents and more kids to know about them. So I don't remember what your question was. I've probably gone so far off of it. Broadband. Okay. Yeah. Broadband.
How that works. So is the city going to own the system and pay for it? And then how do they, so the city's getting involved in the broadband business, and will they make money with that? Is that the goal?
Yes, they'll make money at it in a way that they can support the infrastructure cost.
So how are they going to do that if they're giving it away for free?
And so the business model would be there will be people who will want to pay for the next level. You know, everyone will have the base level at no cost.
Well, most people who have cell phones have broadband on their cell phone, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody, has LTE access, I would guess, if your cell phone supports that.
So, I mean, so this is going to help people that don't have cell phones?
Well, and
excuse me.
Just because not everyone has a hotspot on their cell phone. So, AISD provides most of its students with a laptop. They've got a Chromebook that they take home to do their homework. But the Chromebook doesn't have access to the internet independent of itself. It's got to hook in somehow. So maybe it hooks in through a hotspot on a parent's phone. But if the parent doesn't pay the fees to have that hotspot, or maybe the parent doesn't have a cell phone, then that Chromebook, like AISD, I think right now, they pay for 10,000 hotspots that they give out to families, knowing that this family doesn't have any other way to access the internet.
So you would think that a private company would come in and be willing to provide that for the advertising.
I have talked to 2 different private companies who do business here in our city, asking them about their plans to expand into the areas. We have a heat map that shows the areas of town that do not have access to broadband or have less access to broadband. And both of those companies have told me that from an infrastructure investment business point of view, they cannot justify the dollars to provide those services.
Because I would think you're still going to have to run on AT&T or Verizon no matter how you...
So you will have to have a provider, and we will look to use a local company to do that. So it's more like a public-private partnership, and the city is closing the gap on the funding that the private industry in their business model looks at it and sees we're never going to get there. We're never going to be able to justify to our investors and our shareholders to invest that money for a profit. We're never going to turn a profit on that investment. So this is how we step in and solve the problem. And people have said, well, what's it going to cost? And we're still clarifying those numbers. But I think a very valid question is, what does it cost us not to do it? Because if we take that 5th grader who doesn't do their math homework, who doesn't then finish high school and doesn't enter into the workforce at the same job level that they're capable of, it costs them, costs their family in their quality of life and their wage earning capacity. They will pay fewer taxes. They possibly will rely heavier on social services, so it costs us as a taxpayer. But what does it cost the business that hires that employee? Because they could be hiring them at maybe they have an associate's degree and they would be adding that much value into the business. Instead, they're working a minimum wage job. So and you multiply that out over a 50-year working career, that's a lot of loss. That's a lot of loss. So it sort of depends on how you look at it. What does it cost us now, or what does it cost us now to do it versus what does it actually cost us over that 50-year span to not do it?
Yeah, I wonder how I made it pre-internet.
I was pre-internet too.
But we seem to get along just fine. And the other, I'm just thinking out loud here, but the problem that I see is that we don't have people that are capable of doing real work. It's all got to be, they can't do it on a computer. They can't do anything. They can't fix anything. They can't do any manual jobs. Where are our plumbers and our heating and air and our builders and our framers and the people that actually make the city work and do the real work? Where are they going to come from?
I'm very pleased that AISD and CISD and River Road all have trade academies. It's taken a minute for each one of them to develop those, and I think part of it was responding to or adjusting to the idea that post-high school education doesn't necessarily happen in a classroom on a university campus. Amarillo College has driven this and taught me so much about post-high school education. And I think culturally, societally, we've learned what it costs us when we don't value all forms of education, not just book learning, classroom learning, but those school districts are investing in teaching the trades. And Amarillo College, of course, is investing in an internship program that would allow businesses and kids to earn and learn as they go. And so partnering with the school districts and this internship program at Amarillo College, I really have a tremendous amount of hope that we are investing in our trades. We are investing in kids whose aptitude and curiosity pulls them toward working with their hands in whether it's being an electrician or being in construction. We need to affirm that work is valuable too.
Well, they can make more money doing that than most attorneys make.
So we need to make sure kids see that, and we cast a vision for them in that, and then we come alongside them with providing them the tools and the training they need to be ready to accomplish that.
We need people that can fix things. And my concern is that there's fewer and fewer of those type people. I mean, we see it every day. And I see it in tenants, totally helpless. Mm. They can't even change a light bulb.
Really?
I mean, I end up going LED on everything because they either steal the light bulbs or they don't know what to do if it goes out. It's crazy.
Well, certainly everyone should know how to change a light bulb.
Yeah. Or change their tire on their car, and basic skills that you would think parents would teach their kids, but I guess they're just not.
Yeah.
But they're spending, I guess what I'm thinking is maybe we spend a little bit too much time on the screens, and we need to spend a little more time outside getting to know our neighbors.
Well, I would definitely be in favor of that. It is true, we're not trending away from digital things. More and more services are being offered digitally, and it's beneficial for the taxpayer, for the city to offer services digitally, because it saves us money, like on brick and mortar space. We need less office space if we can offer a service virtually. I think as far as digital records management and things like that, makes a lot of sense on efficiency, but we can't trend toward digital services, even though they save taxpayers money, unless every citizen has access to those digital services. Otherwise, we're creating two different classes of citizens, and none of us are in favor of that. That's not the country that we live in.
Well, it takes time. So
Does
a lot
take
of the
time.
older people refuse to learn anything about technology.
Yeah.
But time will solve that issue, right?
Yeah.
But so does the city have their billing for utilities and that sort of stuff set up digitally yet? Or do y'all still mail everybody a bill?
You can opt out of a bill. You can. So it's your choice. We're in that transition. You can get a bill, or you can pay for it electronically. You can come in. As a matter of fact, the city just started a new service. We have a mobile utility unit, and so it'll be sort of like those food trucks that you see. You can follow our mobile utility unit, and week by week it'll move around the city. And if it's easier for you to come there to pay your bill, if you're one of those folks that likes to pay in person, great. You can just hop on the app and see where the truck is, and if it's close to you, great. You can go there and pay your water bill. If you want to come on down to City Hall and pay it, great. If you want to sign up for auto pay through your bank account, that's an option too. So for a minute, you have to provide all the different options while you're transitioning toward citizens who have access to digital services and actually want that to be their primary way of interfacing with the city. That's not everybody. It might not be you and I, Dan, but
well, like what I do with my tenants, I charge my tenants that won't pay online an inconvenience fee. Mm. So if they come in and pay with a check, well, it costs us. It costs us a lot in time and processing, and so we charge them an extra $10. A lot of people will still do it, but we like the ones that pay electronically. It makes life easy, but it took me a long time to get over that hump. I was always against it, and finally, when I did it, I mean, like, wow, this is great. It saves me probably 3 employees.
So, obviously, city's not in that position. We're offering the same fees to everybody, whether they access the online services or they come in face-to-face, but we're always on the lookout for how to save the citizens money. How can we improve our operations?
Those people don't have bank accounts, and that's a problem. So they have to get a money order, or do y'all take cash?
It's a good question. I would assume we do, but I don't know the answer. We're back down to the nitty-gritty operational things.
Maybe you can get it all on the blockchain.
Yeah, maybe.
But actually, I'm sure somebody will come up with that. But apparently that's going to be the future of the Internet's going to switch to that eventually. Totally different concept.
Who knows? 5 years from now, we can't even conceptualize what's coming 5 years from now. And that's, again, what are we teaching our kids? We have to teach them just problem-solving skills. And we as a city have to have a culture that embraces change. I do think that's something that we struggle with. I struggle with it as I get older, is being willing to embrace change. I think, well, I like it. I'm comfortable with this. I know how this works. I don't want it to change. But it's hard to progress and grow and stay relevant unless you are changing and adapting. So I think one of my roles as mayor is to promote cultural things, and I think Amarillo would be well served for us to have a culture that embraces change instead of fighting change.
Well, we tend to be a little more conservative up here, and conservatives tend to be a little bit more independent thinking than they might be elsewhere. So it's very difficult to get more independent-minded people to change. It's very difficult. It's like herding cats. Because we all want to do our own thing our own way. But when I talk to the voters, some of the things that they indicate bothers them and they seem to be upset about, one of them is the parking downtown. Well, I heard about it this afternoon from a voter. Why did they do that? Charge for parking downtown. They feel like it's a tax on the businesses downtown, and it's not fair to those businesses. So why did y'all choose to charge for parking to penalize those businesses downtown?
It was not meant as a penalty to the businesses. I said that city council involves having a role, a long-term thinking role. And the councils before us had supported the downtown strategic plan to revitalize downtown. I think it's been a success. Many hundreds of thousands of dollars of private money has invested in downtown so that it is revitalized and is an economic driver in our city now. One of the key components in that downtown strategic plan always was building a downtown parking garage that would support a downtown entertainment venue, Hodgetown, and also support a downtown convention hotel, which we do have across from City Hall. Revitalizing or redeveloping the Civic Center to also use those parking garage and entertainment and hotel amenities is part of that plan. But paid parking was part of that plan. So in the course of, it's like knocking down dominoes, as you move to each part of that plan, each council that's held the baton has had to do their part over the last 15 years to implement that plan for downtown. And it fell to this council, it was time to implement that part of the plan. Never as a penalty, but as part of recognizing that parking is an amenity. Parking is something that you have limited spaces for downtown. And if you're driving people to come to events at Hodgetown or to, for instance, stay at the hotel or attend an event at the Civic Center, the parking around there is limited. We only have X number of spaces. And we need to encourage people to value it because it costs them $1 to park there for 2 hours, and encourage people to move on when they're done. And I'll tell you, the Nelson family is guilty of this. We have 5 drivers. It's not unusual for us to show up in 3 or 4 cars. So we have to start changing our mindset about those downtown parking spaces. And as a business downtown, I don't have paid parking in front of our business is at 3rd and Polk. And that was outside of what the professional consultants, they're the ones that drew the footprint telling us where paid parking should happen. I want parking to be enforced around my business because I don't want someone to come at 8 o'clock in the morning, park there, stay there all day at 5 p.m. It doesn't allow my customers to have access to that parking spot outside the business. I need there to be turnover. I need cars to come, do their business, and leave, and not just maybe somebody who's working a job be parking in that space that I need to be available for my customer. So as we grow, we will have the same parking challenges that other large cities have in their downtown areas. And this was the next step in implementing that plan. It was to begin to have paid parking. I'm open to hearing citizens give ideas or feedback on it. Again, you and I were just talking about change is hard. A lot of people struggle with it. I think the best way to do it is incrementally. So we made the paid parking as small a footprint as we could based on what the professionals who implemented the plan and did the parking study based on what they recommended. And now we need to live with it for a minute. I will add this. There are added costs to having a revitalized downtown in maintaining those the streets get driven on more because we have more going on downtown. There's more trash downtown than there was 10 years ago because there are more people and more activities down there. It costs something to have somebody who enforces parking, whether it's a paid parking spot or just a timed measured parking spot. And we need more police presence with Hodgetown and some of these things that we've added that are attracting people downtown. We need more public safety dollars to go toward providing a safe environment for citizens and families to come and do those fun activities. How do we pay for all of that stuff? And I can tell you that my parents who live in Spearman have a package. I don't think they have a full season ticket, but they, like, every 3 games or every 4 games, they have a ticket to the Sod Poodles. Well, they're not taxpayers. They don't pay for our roads. They don't help us pay for our police officers, and they don't pay for solid waste to pick up trash. But they come for the parades. They come and enjoy Hodgetown. And when they come over and go to a doctor's visit, if they come downtown and park and eat lunch at a restaurant, now they're helping us pay. They're helping us cover the cost of what it costs us as citizens to provide those maintenance services on those downtown streets and properties. So those are a lot of my ideas behind it. But
Well, I just think it's very difficult to get people in the Panhandle to be willing to pay to park. You know, they've tried it 3 times throughout history. Every time they get downtown going, then they'd put up parking meters and all the businesses left. This is the 3rd time. Let's hope it doesn't happen again.
I hope not too.
So that's the concern. But we're very sensitive to those things. And then I think another thing that voters, and I didn't realize this was such a big issue. I guess I missed the issue. But at the forum the other night, everybody was talking about the trash. Apparently that's a big issue with certain groups in town about the trash issue. And you were explaining that some of the alleys you can't get down, and you went to these plastic rollout carts, and people like them. But some people are just up in arms about it. Do you have anything to add to that?
What are you hearing people say about it, Dan?
Well, I mean, you kind of heard it a little bit at the forum. It's basically that they're upset that the city did away with the dumpsters and have gone to these plastic carts.
Well,
now some people like them.
Yeah, a lot of people like them, actually. It's just it's so interesting. You can tell
you have people. I think part of it, I think what goes along with that is like new subdivisions that they're building, there's no alleys.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that, so I think it may have something to do with the fact that they want alleys instead of no alleys and everything out in the front like it is in Austin and places like that.
Mm-hmm.
So are y'all getting rid of alleys and new subdivisions? Is that the long-term plan? Do they plan on getting rid of all dumpsters eventually and making everybody use these plastic carts? I mean, what's the long-term plan there?
Well, let me say that if you have a dumpster, I don't plan to get rid of it. So there's roughly 70,000 accounts, solid waste accounts in the city. 17,000 of them had an issue. Either their alley was one way, so that big trash truck pulled in front ways to pick up the trash from the dumpsters, and then it had to back out blindly out of that alley. So that was a problem. Some people, because they didn't have an alley, had a dumpster that sat on the street right by their front yard. It was unsightly and not sanitary for their kids to play out in the front yard. And then there were some citizens who also did not have alleys that used a bag just to set their bagged garbage out once a week, and the city paid somebody to come by, and we paid employees to hand pick it up, which is the most expensive trash service that we offered in the city, by the way. So 17,000 different accounts qualified in one of those three categories. And those were the people that we said we can provide you better service, safer service, more clean so that animals aren't digging into your trash bags. And so we switched those folks to the plastic hand carts. It saves taxpayers dollars because we're not paying as many employees to pick up the trash by hand off the curb. And we can now use a truck that dumps the plastic carts. And, we've worked a whole lot of issues. Elderly people who don't want a big cart, it's harder for them. Now they have a smaller cart. And it was asked at the forum, what do we do for people who have a disability? And we've worked with those folks, and I'm open to hearing more ideas if there are other citizen concerns. But I think it's important for the rest of us, the other, whatever that is, 50, however many thousand people who aren't having a change. We're keeping our dumpsters, and yet there's somebody out there, back to social media and people who spread misinformation. There was never a plan to get rid of that. So
that probably goes back to your point about people are resistant to change.
Maybe. And as to whether or not, developers moving forward are going with alleys or no alleys or.
So is that up to the developer, or is that something the city's mandating?
And I don't know the answer to that question. I would have to ask and get back to you, but I think it's up to a developer.
It's probably cheaper for the developer not to have the alley, but to me, alleys are fantastic.
Yeah, I can clarify and get that information, but I don't know of any driving force from the city council or any conversation inside development services pushing one way or the other. So I
just noticed some new subdivisions going in that have no alleys, so I thought, well, could it be a new thing?
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
I think alleys really enhance a neighborhood. Keeps it clean and neat. Rear entry garages, so you don't have a junked up neighborhood.
I live in an old house, and it doesn't have it has an alley, but it doesn't have rear entry garage. It doesn't even have an attached garage. So,
Well, you understand what I'm saying then,
because
you can put people can put all their stuff in the back with an alley. But and that's where all your utilities are, and it's simple. And if somebody needs to come in with new service, like in my neighborhood up in Quail Creek, they just AT&T just came in and ran fiber in the alleys. And I think Vexus is working on doing the same thing. So the alleys are there for the utilities, and I think it makes the neighborhood look good. But that's me. I spent a lot of time in Austin and no alleys. It's a nightmare. So whenever something needs to be done, they're tearing up the front of your house. Everything's along the curb. I thought, well, this just doesn't make any sense when they could have put in alleys.
You asked earlier what's one of the things that you've gotten accomplished, and we've worked very hard on trying to get our alleys clean. Sometimes in my alley anyway, we have a few rental houses, and it's not unusual for those rental houses to change tenants and there be all of this stuff laid up next to the dumpster. It's not in the dumpster. It's just permanently parked beside it. And so that's illegal. It's illegal dumping. And I think as a city, we need to do a better job about training citizens.
Yeah, the problem is catching them.
And so what we have done is pass an ordinance to enhance police being able to educate people. And also we've offered this bulky item pickup where you can put it on the curb, call the city, and they'll come get it in 48 hours. And so, we're just off. Nobody loves seeing that stuff sitting out on the curb, but it's only there for this long. And I would rather see it on my neighbor's curb for a day than see it in my alley for the next 6 months. It's harder.
Now, I know it's hard to do, but, and I mentioned this to the previous city manager, and I think he wanted me to be put in a straitjacket. But, why don't you just instead of charging people to take stuff to the dump, why don't you pay them? You'd have the cleanest city in America in a month.
It's an interesting idea.
I mean, you'd have everybody in town pay them $10 a ton. You'd have the cleanest alleys in America in a week.
I will say that as a citizen, you can take things to the dump at no charge.
Well, if
not
you-
construction, like if you're
Yeah, there's all
demoing your
these-
kitchen and you pull all of that out.
Yeah,
But
I've been-
otherwise, you can take it. You just have to tell them, and they check your address. But if you live in Bushland, you can't take things to our dump without paying. But if you're a citizen of Amarillo, you can.
I'm probably the only citizen of Amarillo that's been kicked out of the dump. So
I'm going to get you a hat that says that.
banned from the landfill. Oh, I was not happy. This was 25 years ago now, but I was cleaning up. Well, I had cleaned up a bunch of rental properties I'd bought, and it was like on a weekend, everything was closed, and I'd stacked it up at my office, and then I loaded it up on this big triple axle trailer. I had it, and I went out there and I dumped one load, came back, got another load, and I just give them an address of each rental property each time, different one. Well, on the third trip, she said, "Well, you've been here twice already. Is this rental property?" And I said, "Yeah." And she says, "Oh, well, you have to pay." I said, "Well, what do I owe?" And it was like $30, right? I had $20 on me. And they said, I said, "You either take $20 or we're done. What are you going to do?" Well, she said, "I have to have the full amount." So I left. 2 years later, I go out there, same triple axle trailer. We were loaded to the gills. It was starting to rain, and I had one of my employees with me, and we raced out there to get a minute before it closed, trying to get in there, and pulled up there. And she said, "Oh, you can't come in because you owe us $30. I said, "I don't." Then it dawned on me that what it was about. And in the meantime, a year later, prior to that, I'd gotten a utility bill for $30, but it didn't have any address on it. We didn't know what it was. It never occurred to me that that's what it was. So we didn't pay it. They wouldn't let me in. Then it's starting to pour down rain. So they made me back up. When I'm backing up, we sliced 2 of the tires on the trailer.
Oh, Dan.
And so
What a
we're out there in the
frustrating day.
rain trying to get, I had one spare. We got it on there.
Frustrating day.
We get back. I was so mad. If it hadn't been for my employee not letting me do it, I was going to dump every bit of it on the courthouse lawn. So mad. So I've never been back to the dump, ever. So, but to me, if they want to clean up town, why not encourage people to take it to the dump? I mean, that construction material is going to end up in the dump anyway. I don't care how much restrictions you put on it. Where are they going to take it? It's going to get dumped in an alley if you don't let them, if you charge them, right? So it's going to happen. So why not think it through and say, okay, or just try it in a small area and see if it works. Say, okay, this month, everybody in Eastridge gets paid $10 per ton for every bit of trash they take out there. I just think you'd have people cleaning it up because they could make a little bit of money, and it would save the city a bloody fortune.
It's an interesting idea.
But anyway, that's, I think, a little bit different. But to me, the goal is how can we keep the city clean?
Agreed.
But punishing people doesn't work as well as encouraging them.
I like that. I like that perspective.
So, but you could do that on a lot of things. I don't know why the city, for instance, couldn't sub out their trash to third parties, let them compete, give them different areas, see which one does the best. And the city could still bill it and make a profit, because I'm sure trash is a profit center for the city. I mean, you got to make enough money to pay your employees and the high salaries the mayor and the council get that They've got to pay that $10.
Now,
a
somebody's
meeting.
watching who will really think I get paid a high salary. So let's make sure we tell them I get paid $10 for every meeting I attend, and we have meetings twice a month. So that's a max of $20 a month.
Wow.
And I will say there have been times, often when I miss a meeting, it's because the governor called and invited me to a meeting in Austin or something that I felt like justified missing a city council meeting. I don't get my $10 that week, even if I was off on city business and missed a city council meeting. So it's not a get-rich job.
The other thing a lot of people are talking about now that's big in the campaign is the single-member districts versus at-large. What's your position on that?
I think it's fine for us to have that conversation. I think we need to be intentional about it, getting all the voices around the table. The time to have that conversation is after our census data comes in. And if we want to hire a consultant to see whether or not districts can even be drawn, it's one thing to theoretically say it would be great to have a district where this ethnic group is represented. Well, we're a very dispersed city. They don't actually all live in the same neighborhood.
Well, I don't think people think like that. We're all Americans. We're all citizens of Amarillo. And I think anytime you try to divide people by race, I think it irritates people. So I think that's an old thing that the left used to divide the country. It's never worked. The people see through it and they're tired of it.
When you go to drawing districts with a race component to them, it's actually challenging from a mathematical point of view under our current population and our current the way folks are dispersed all across the city. So it's interesting to me to hear at the forums hearing people say, well, I think we should vote on it. Well, we would have to vote on it by law because our city charter would be changed. So there absolutely would be an election, and every citizen is going to get to have their say on whether or not they would like to do that. If it ever is brought up and put on the ballot, it has to be put on the ballot. The charter would have to be changed in order to do that. I think another great question to be asked and studied is the size of our council right? It's challenging to do the work of the city council with 5 people. That hasn't changed in a very long time, and yet we've grown a lot. And just under the Open Meetings Act, I can only talk to one other council member about a topic. So if I want to say, well, what are you thinking about this? How do you think the council should approach even having this conversation? I'm only having that, brainstorming session with one council member. And I sometimes feel very limited in leadership of the council in that I can only have one conversation. I'd like to hear other ideas to make sure we're approaching it right, setting the conversation or approaching the conversation in the setting that we want to be doing that in. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle with just 5 of us. So I might be interested in having strange. 7 of us.
That seems a little odd. I guess you could call a public meeting, though, right? And then talk to about
absolutely, I can. But sometimes there are, I can't think of a good example right now. I can't come up with an example here on the spot, but just most of us in a leadership position gravitate toward, you hear more ideas and then you know better how to steer it. Like, should it appear on the discussion agenda or should we just move straight ahead into an action item on it? And so,
well, can you talk to the city manager about it and then the city manager talk to the council members?
No, we have to be very careful about a walking quorum. So I just try to keep a real straight approach to that. And I only talk to one council member about it. And then I know I've not stepped out of bounds in any way. So back to the question, though, I think it would be interesting conversation, and I don't have a hesitation to having those
I don't think it would be that difficult. You've got JP districts in Potter and Randall County that you could use. Just use them. They're there. Why carve out different districts? And then you could add a couple of at-large, and you're done. Or add one for Randall and one for Potter.
You make it sound simple. I have no idea if that's what the process would really be.
To me,
I think we have to hire a consultant to know that for sure.
Well, I'm typically think consultants aren't nearly as, they figure out how to complicate things when most things are very simple.
Well, I'm not saying I want to complicate it, but I think I want to make sure that we've done it in accordance with the law. And you have to have somebody who has that expertise to know whether or not the districts meet the requirements.
Well, when they've done the census and they've set up the JP districts, they've already done that work, right? Because they're trying to get roughly the same number of citizens in each JP district, or commissioner.
But are those set up by county?
Yes.
And so I don't know that the rules that apply to counties also apply to cities. I'm just saying I'm unfamiliar with that.
Well, if they write the rules, they could write the rules any way they want. Keep it simple. But I think if you had to have totally different districts that didn't go with precincts or commissioner districts, JP districts, or that sort of thing, you're creating an absolute nightmare. And so overcomplicating it that nobody will know who represents what. I think that's a problem.
Well, I think it'd be a good conversation for us to have.
I think the other thing that I hear people complaining about the current council is the fines assessed on the mask mandate. They were very upset about that. They didn't think that was reasonable.
There were no fines assessed to any business. So let's just make sure we're operating on facts there.
Yeah, I don't think anybody got fined, but why would...
Yeah, nobody got fined. No business got fined.
Of course, I think Abbott's got some issues because of what he did. And then, he shut down... He did the mask mandate. Then the judge in Dallas tried to enforce it on Shelley Luther. She resisted, and then the governor comes out and say, well, yeah, I did that, but I didn't really mean it.
Mm-hmm. Can't enforce it. There is an order, but it can't be enforced.
So why would you create an order that can't be enforced?
You'd have to ask the governor about that.
But then the city council did the same thing.
No, the city council never passed a mask ordinance. The governor was the only one who ordered a mask, who had mask orders in place. And again, we're back to information getting twisted out in the public arena. What the city council did, let me just walk through it real quick. The governor ordered that masks be worn in public places. There is a state law in the Health and Safety Code that says the health department can enforce a fine against any business that's operating their business unsafely. That's not the right wording, but that's essentially what it said. So that state ordinance, that state law is already there. Those two things are related because when the governor put the order in place saying masks were required, then that made a business operating without masks an unsafe place. So the state law that's been there for decades hooks up with the governor's new order, and all of a sudden this state law that's old and been there a long time now relates to masks. Okay? What we did as a city was we took that exact language of the state law and copied it into a city ordinance. So our health department could now go into a business, educate them on how to operate their business safely, both under the governor's orders, using both of these, now a city ordinance and a state law that were the same. And then if there was any enforcement of that ordinance, it would happen in city municipal court as opposed to going to state district court. So what it did was create a talking, teaching moment for our city. And we could say to businesses, this is already out there. We didn't make it that way. The pandemic made it that way. Our governor made it that way. What we want to inform you is we need your help in order to keep our hospitals open and operating. They were overwhelmed, Dan, and people were dying. And so it boiled down to public safety, that we were guarding the health of our community and we were guarding the health of our economy, because Amarillo has been more open than any other state across Texas. Early on, when we went all in and the governor was asking people to shelter in place, we created a low risk category for businesses. If you could operate your business in a low risk fashion, even if you weren't on the governor's list for being an essential business, you could stay open in Amarillo. And I'm not aware of any other city that did that. We've worked very, very hard to partner with small businesses, to partner with other businesses, whether it was a meatpacking plant, Walmart, Home Depot, or whether you were a mom and pop shop doing business in our city. We had roundtable discussions, over 30 of them, to hear from business owners and to put their needs at the forefront of the decisions that we made. Our hospitals were crashing the week of Thanksgiving when we made this decision to mirror that state law that was already in place and to put a city ordinance of the same language in place so that citizens would be aware of just how important it was to abide with the governor's mask order. And it made a difference. Within a matter of 2 weeks, our numbers were changing. Our hospitals were trending back to sustainable numbers. And then you carried that out. It got us all through the holidays and into the new year, tracking and trending where we needed to be with our COVID numbers. And not one business was ever fined or penalized under this ordinance. So I think it was a difficult leadership decision, but listening to our local medical authorities and knowing that if we can't keep our people safe, that will impact whether or not our businesses can stay open. We always had those two priorities in our forefront of our minds when we made decisions about the pandemic.
Well, I think the Texas Supreme Court ruled that Abbott's order was unconstitutional. So, I mean, if a governor does something that's not constitutional and violates people's private property rights, isn't it incumbent on us to say we're not going to obey it? Otherwise, we're violating the Constitution.
You know, Dan, we're going to dialogue about this for years and years. It was not an easy year, and the decisions had to be made in a short time frame. So if you want to buy me a cup of coffee and we have a constitutional law discussion about whether the governor's order was constitutional or not, I support the governor. And I know he's not perfect. But he has conservative values that reflect my conservative values. And he's pro-business, and he's pro-life, and he's for freedom of religion. There are a lot of things about the governor that I support. This was a curveball for him this year. No governor has ever had to face it he did.
We had 50 other governors, and some of them didn't do that, and they didn't have any problems. Kristi Noem, the governor of Florida, DeSantis.
I'm talking about Governor Abbott. I'm talking about Texas. And what I'm trying to set a platform to say is you can disagree with what he did, and you should vote that way.
Well, I mean,
it's your next chance to vote for him.
I'm pointing out what the voters are saying, and they're just very upset about it.
I'm saying I think he's a good governor.
Well, it's just like he extended early voting by a week. He didn't have the authority to do that. But we let him get by. When we allow our elected officials to violate our Constitution, which is what we are supposed to support, I mean, that's a problem. Because what else can they do? If we don't enforce our laws, I think it's a problem.
I think we've got to work to clarify what those laws are. And I hope our state legislators are doing that right now. I'm not sure in the lens of a pandemic that there was any guidance for telling the governor how long can an emergency order last from the governor's pen.
There's all kinds of problems. I mean, what's the actual definition of a pandemic?
I agree. I think
it's
we need
7.5% of the people infected die. We were at 0.03.
These are things that should be discussed. They should be discussed. They should be
they've
further clarified
they've created
by
fear, and
by
the
our
fear
legislature.
is the problem. I think it's the fear that they instilled in people.
Well, I'm grateful that in our city we did not lead with fear. We tried to lead with facts, and sometimes those facts were hard to come by. But yet decisions had to be made on the facts we had at the time. And I hope when people go backwards and grade our paper, they'll remember that we made the best decision that we could make with the facts we had at the time. And I hope they have grace for us. And I hope we can look at the decisions we made with an eye toward improving how to do it better next time. I am not going to dig in and say that we did it perfectly this time. Our hearts were always in the right place.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with making a mistake, but I think when people make mistakes, they need to own up to them and say, I made a mistake. We shouldn't have done that. But politicians are never willing, for some reason, to do that. They never, ever will do that.
Do you think we have an electorate that sets a culture that allows us to do that?
I think so. I think people are very understanding and will certainly forgive people for making mistakes. I think if people own up to them and do that, I think it would benefit that person highly. I mean, we're all the same. We want all the same things, but we don't want, particularly the people out in West Texas, we don't want to be controlled or told what to do.
So true.
And that's what makes us great. That's why I think we're a better area than the rest of the state, because of the people here are that way, and they're independent, and they believe in the fundamental principles that made our country great. And we're seeing those watered down, basically disintegrated. The Constitution's been totally wiped out, trampled on, tore up. You know, that's why you see this secessionist movement now. And apparently it's going to be on the ballot. I mean, that's a big step. I think they're going about it the wrong way. But to me, we should get the 37 states that are Republican and conservative and believe in the United States and the Constitution, get those 37 states together and kick out the 13. You reverse it on them and say, you're no longer part of the United States because you violated our Constitution. You stole our vote. You disenfranchised us. And that way they can be their own country. That's what they want. And leave us alone.
Well, it's challenging times for sure. And I think it's really important for us to build consensus and to figure out how to work together. I don't really want to think about it.
Nobody wants to get anybody sick. It's a virus. You get it. You're going to get over it. I think it's designed to attack people with pre-existing conditions. Those people should stay at home and not have to go to work if they don't want, if they don't feel comfortable. But to me, it would be better if the individuals made their own choices and the businesses made the choices that were best for them and their employees, because I trust the people to make the right decision. So when the government does something like that, I think what it shows is that our elected officials don't trust the people, and it's the other way around. I don't think the people now trust their elected officials.
I definitely think now that that vaccines are readily available for anybody that wants one. It's much easier as a leader to say we're in a position where anyone can choose.
Yeah, if you're worried, get the vaccine.
Right. And if you don't want the vaccine, great.
If you
Don't get
sick,
the vaccine.
Don't whine.
Right. Don't get the vaccine. But it was before when vaccine wasn't available or certain people weren't qualified for it yet. That's the hard spot where whose individual choice, and neither was right or wrong, but again, there's 200,000 of us and we have 200,000 different ways of interpreting what the governor did and what is a pandemic and how much danger is there to the virus and what do I want for me and my family. We have to have a spirit of compromise, not compromising our Constitution, but just recognizing we're going to move through this season and then we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about how to do it better. We're going to talk about how to sharpen up what the laws say about how we do elections, how we do emergency orders, what kind of time limits and resource limits do we have that go behind those? How do we change our process? I mean, Texas legislature only meets every other spring. So, and I like that. I like that we don't have a legislature that's in session all of the time looking for something to do. No, we've got plenty for you to do. Just come and do it every other year. But maybe in an emergency, we need to be able to call our legislature back. And we don't have any process for that.
He could have. He should have. Yeah. All he had to do is call the legislature, say, I want to extend early voting a week, and they would have passed it. No problem.
I think we're going to have some good conversations about that going forward, not just this legislative session, but in sessions.
That doesn't mean people aren't going to vote for him, right? Because I think he made a mistake. I think it was a huge error.
To do what?
To extend early voting by a week without the legislature's authorization. He did the same thing that we're whining about in these other states. I mean, it wasn't to the extent, but you just don't go there because it's a slippery slope that can't be stopped. And once you start sliding it down it, you go over the cliff in a hurry. Mm-hmm. And that's what concerns a lot of us that, are concerned about the voters, what happens to them, because then you're basically in a dictatorship.
That's certainly not what we want.
No, we want a constitutional representative republic. The Constitution is the key, and it's a pretty simple document. It doesn't take long to read it, and all it really does is it tells you what the government can't do, but yet they're doing it, and we don't do anything about it. And so hopefully the voters I think the voters are starting to wake up, realize that their vote is critical, that they have the power, they have to use it. It's the individual voter that can change everything, not the people in Austin and not the people in D.C. I mean, they're going to run right over that individual voter if they don't stand up, and that's what they're doing. But I think people are waking up to that.
I really appreciate the work you do to engage our voters here in Amarillo.
It's tough to get people to do that, but we have to do something, right? We can do nothing and complain about it, or we can actually do something.
Yeah, I'm for doers.
I'm trying to do something to
doers.
Engage the voters, to inform them so they can make an informed decision. And I think it's great that you come here and we get this out to all the candidates and get it out to as many people as we can so they can make an informed decision. Because if you explain your positions, then people are going to understand you. And then they won't get the misinformation that's on social media.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important for us to have conversations like this. And again, I also think it's important that we allow each other to not agree. This has been a great conversation that we've had.
And I may not be right.
And I may not be right either. But somewhere in the middle.
But that's up to the voters to decide.
Exactly.
And I'm just passionate about, to me, things are a little more black and white, and I never agreed with, well, it's just a little bit this way and a little bit that way. I got in trouble when I was a kid, I remember. I didn't know. They called my parents because I guess the teacher asking the fifth grade, you know, Dan, is honesty the best policy? I said, no. Well, they didn't give me a chance to explain.
Yeah.
So I got in a little trouble over that. But when my parents asked me, well, why did you say that? I said, because that's to say there is an alternative. There is no alternative. It's not a policy. It's a principle.
Yeah.
So you have to have principles. And if you don't stick to those principles, everything goes to pot.
Yeah.
So that's where I come from.
In a forum the other day, I took a question that said, what standards and ethics do you use to govern your public service? And I said, well, I don't use a different set of standards and ethics in public service than I do in being a mom or in running my small business or being a lawyer. I use the same. My faith drives that. My Christian faith says, what my ethics principles are, and I use them wherever I am, whatever I'm doing. I don't change them in and out. And I think that's a Panhandle value, that we value. The integrity to me is you're the same person on Sunday morning that you are on Wednesday afternoon, that you are on Friday night. That just genuine sameness is a Panhandle value, I think.
Well, so before we wrap it up, do you want to tell the voters what you have planned for the next, is it going to be 4 years or 2 years?
It's 2 years. Our charter provides for 2 years. We did try the alternating so that everybody would be on rolling terms, but voters didn't want to do that this time. That's fine. We gave them the option. Going forward, I think it's important to finish COVID and continue the vaccines. I mean, we've done a fantastic job in vaccinating people. I think
Amarillo's one of the best run operations vaccinating people in the country.
Yes, and we kept it simple, and we said speed is the most important thing, and it's worked. So finish our vaccination effort.
How many more people do they have that want to get vaccinated, do you know?
We vaccinated over 100,000 people. So, it's not just Amarillo, so you can't say, well, we got 100,000 to go. No, we're vaccinating people from all across the Panhandle, and we do we do work in a tri-state region. We all know that. People from Guyman come to our hospital. People from Clovis come to our hospital. Yep. So we have vaccinated people outside, not just Texans, with these vaccines. And I think that's important because the goal is to reduce the load on our hospitals, and those people come to our hospitals. So we need to finish that well. We need to continue to support our police officers. The 4 years I've been in office, we've increased the amount of funding that we've given to public safety, and I think we need to continue to do that. Certainly not defunding our police department or our fire department in any way. I think it's important for us to continue working on our roads. Coming out of winter, we have a lot of potholes. We've got to get those fixed, and we have to continue to increase spending on infrastructure like roads, which this council has done a good job of increasing road repair funding. I think we need to look toward the future for economic development and keep shopping, keep recruiting businesses like Amazon and the Texas Tech Vet School, projects that will bring dollars and jobs into our economy. And that's not easy to do. I think this council is doing it well, and we'd like to have a chance to continue doing that for the next 2 years, and then looking at some big projects that would impact the quality of life of our voters, like the broadband project. How can we put that in place in a cost-effective way that it would provide a quality of life benefit that over the next 10 to 20 years would affect our workforce, help our business owners hire more skilled employees, and be an attraction that people could use to sell our city with. We would be the only city in the state of Texas that has broadband access provided citywide through this type of system. And I think it's fine for us to stand on a leadership platform and say, yes, we had broadband issues. Yes, we figured out how to solve it ourselves. Do you want to come and see what we've done? Just like in the vaccine clinic. Other cities have traveled here to see how we set up our clinic. How are we vaccinating people so quickly? What else can we be doing? What other problems can Amarillo be the leader in solving and be a model for other cities?
Well, that's what I always say. I don't want to look and see what they do in Austin or Dallas. They should be looking at what we do.
It's good.
And that's the type of city we want to be.
I
think that's the way that most people think.
I agree.
And I think we have all the talent here in the Panhandle that we need, and then some. So we don't need to get outside people in when we've raised them right here.
Agreed. But our story needs to get out. And it's been amazing in the last 3 months how I've seen that happen through the vaccine clinic. Just yesterday, I heard a nurse tell a story. She lives in Washington, D.C., but she grew up here in Amarillo, and she gave somebody a shot, and she was working at a vaccination clinic, and she gave this person a shot. They were talking about vaccines across the nation, and this lady said, well, how about that Amarillo, Texas? Have you ever heard of that place? They've got the best vaccine clinic in the nation. And the nurse said, I'm from Amarillo. So she was so proud to be able to brag on her hometown. And I've heard the same thing in the Capitol in Austin, that people are stopping our representatives as they go down the hallway to say, wow, great things happening in Amarillo. Way to go on your vaccination clinic. Way to go on your economic development. It does build a reputation for us. And it's not so much about keeping our kids here, which is important, but it's about giving them a microphone to tell their story out to the rest of the world. And we're doing that well. And I hope voters will vote for me as mayor, and voters will vote for this council to continue doing the work they've been doing the last 4 years.
Well, we're a unique area, and I think if the city would, it may not necessarily be the city. Most of the reason people will come to Amarillo is for private stuff like Cadillac Ranch, the Big Texan. They don't come here really. They don't know us for baseball or anything. I would think we would focus on the things that make Amarillo unique, the big ranches and the big ranch history, the cattle history, and the Palo Duro Canyon that most of the people in Amarillo don't even know exists. It's 10 miles as the crow flies from where we're sitting. And the railroad history. I would think if we focused on those things that make us unique, you would get people to stop in Amarillo then, or come to Amarillo strictly for that, rather than trying to do something that's in every other town. But that's just my thinking. But nobody really knows that Amarillo has this rich history.
We do have great history, and I think we should be promoting it.
Yeah. Be Amarillo.
Yeah.
We don't want to be, I don't care to be like any of these other towns. I don't like them, so I'm here. The reason I came here in 1994 on April the 2nd, 27 years ago to this day, I closed on the first batch of houses up here.
Wow. Happy anniversary.
Yeah. I went downtown to see D. Miller, who's going to be my attorney.
Speaking of Amarillo history,
yeah.
D. Miller.
There's no parking meters. I was in pure heaven. So,
Wow.
because I think I hold the world record of parking tickets in Austin, Texas, and speeding tickets in the state of Texas. But I got the job done.
I've enjoyed visiting with you today. Thanks for this opportunity.
Do you have a website that if people want to learn more about
GingerNelsonforMayor.com has some very specific information about my platform and the things that accomplishments over the last 4 years and things that I hope to accomplish if elected to another term. And there's also a place to donate.
Well, very good. We appreciate you coming by, and good luck.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it.